for many discriminatory laws and constitutional provisions that our state enacted, as well as acknowledge the contributions Chinese have made to our state. Despite the many barriers placed upon them by our government, Chinese in California have made vast contributions to the state. They constructed most of the western leg of the Transcontinental Railroad, helped build our delta levees, assisted in the success of our fishing and agricultural industries, contributing to the greatness of California and Silicon Valley today. This marks the first formal apology offered to the Chinese community and will serve as a reminder of our wrongdoing. Learning from our past and acknowledging the injustice our history holds will help us build a stronger state. ACR 42 passed both the Assembly and the Senate with bipartisan support. I was beaming with pride that day. I knew that millions of people felt the civil rights victory with me. I knew my family and friends were proud due to my career as a community college professor. I've always been an advocate for community colleges and its students. In 2010, that advocacy led me to author legislation that would create a streamlined statewide transfer policy that would put students first in the transfer process for community colleges to four-year universities. Many of my students would complain that the transfer maze was complicated and they would have to take courses over again. It would take 3 years for them to accomplish 2 years worth of education because of the transfer process. And so my law, AB 2302, so that once a student completed the curriculum, they would be provided a transfer degree that guarantees them admission to CSU or UC. I saw a need for this not only as a community college professor, but as someone who went through the same issues as a transfer student because the transfer process was complex and confusing. In my opinion, California community colleges are the key in order for California to have an educated workforce to stay competitive in our global economy. With more than 2.5 million students currently enrolled, the importance of transferring and increasing baccalaureate degrees cannot be overstated. In 2010, my transfer bill passed both houses with bipartisan support and was signed by the governor, improving the transfer process for millions of students to ensure their success for their educational goals. That was quite an accomplishment, and I'm really glad to do that. Now that when you go to community colleges, you transfer, you'll be able to be transferring with much greater ease. During the most recent legislative year, I tackled a problem that was very difficult to me. For hundreds of years, the Chinese community used shark fin soup as a sign of affluence. It is served at weddings, graduations, basically any time there's something to celebrate. However, in order to obtain the main ingredient for this dish, shark's fins were brutally removed from the body and then thrown back in the ocean to slowly bleed out and then ultimately die. This practice of finning is ruthlessly efficient because it enables fishing crews to throw out low-value, unmarketable shark carcasses and retain space only for the high-value, marketable fins, which can reach upwards of $600 a pound, all in the name of tradition. Sharks are being overfished and exploited for the fins at alarming rates unsustainable for human consumption and the overall health of our ocean's ecosystem. Sharks control the order of the ocean. They're the top food predator. They're the apex predator, and their lives being taken affected not only the health of the ocean, but the health of our planet. Because of this, I introduced AB 376, the California Shark Protection Act, a bill which banned the sale, import, possession, and distribution of shark fins. AB 376 protects sharks in our oceans for future generations. The reality is that those sharks have existed for 450 million years. We may be the generation to watch them go extinct. So it is crucial that we take advantage of every opportunity to protect the sea life and the ecosystem of the oceans. We cannot afford to do this because this will impact the global, national, regional, and local seafood industry. And as a Chinese American, I had to look at tradition and think of our role in the world. I knew that introducing a bill like this would be difficult, but I was up for the fight. I wanted to do the right thing. After a long battle in the Assembly and the Senate floors, my bill passed both houses and was signed into law October 7th by Jerry Brown. I'm proud of the work I've done in my last 3 years in the Assembly, and I'm proud of the role I've played in this world. I encourage all of you to sometimes step out of your comfort zone and do the impossible. Every day I wake up and I always ask the question, what am I going to do to make a difference in the world? Today I answered that question with, I'm going to share my story with a group of highly intelligent, motivated high school students. I hope my story has inspired you to continue your path of civil service and continue to change the world. Now I have time for some questions. Any questions?
If you guys want to ask questions, just line up at the mics. We have two standing mics over there.
Any questions at all?
We have one over here.
Hello, my name is Melena Magianos. I'm from Mercy High School in Burlingame. I wanted to ask, you said you're an advocate for higher education. What do you think of the massive budget cuts that are affecting the CSUs and the UCs as of late?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, I came into the Assembly wanting to promote higher education and education in general, and I've cut $42 billion the first year, $26 billion the second year, $20 billion this year. And so it's, and of course we're still got about $10 billion in the hole for next year. And so these cuts are realistic, and I try to save higher ed. You know, I'm trying to promote higher ed. I'm looking for ways to help the students. When they raise I have a bill out, AB 970. When they raise the fees in tuition, they should inform the public and the students of that and have a process for raising the fees. And it should take about 9 months to a year for them to do it instead of having it affect us immediately. And so I'm trying to find revenues for that. In fact, I'm working with the Silicon Valley Caucus, with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which has 357 CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. They operate about $8 trillion of income. They're going to help me prepare a bill to work on higher education funding. And so I believe in the oil severance tax. It will be sustainable. We're only one of 3 states that do not have an oil severance tax, so that we can tax the oil that comes out of our ground. Thank you. And that will bring us about $2 billion a year into higher education. That $2 billion will help us sustain the levels of higher education and education in general. And so I do have a plan to address the downfall, but I need a lot of political will to make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Diana So. I'm currently from Pinole Valley High School. And my question to you is, what should we as young people do in our community? Because, for instance, we can't vote, but we should still be represented, especially since a lot of us have to go to college and we have to get a job in the future, especially since, you know, with our current economic status and how our country is going, with so many people in the baby boomer generation getting older and now focusing on Social Security and their benefits, what should we as young people do when we can't vote? And we need to have people like you represent us. More of you actually are to represent us.
Well, you know, as the chair of the Elections and Redistricting Committee, I approved a bill that when you turn 18 on election day, you can vote. So some people are 17 and a half. But I also approved a bill that, and you guys are justifiably great as advocates for that, to drop the voting age to 16. Because you guys are involved. You guys are 16, you're involved. You know what's going on. And so that's probably the first order of business, is to make the laws reflect the country's mood. And we have over 700-800 students here that are civically engaged. You represent the 16, 17-year-olds, and you should be able to vote since you already know the issues.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Eric Zhang from Irvington High School. So, as we all know, the current National Congress has had some of the lowest approval ratings in history because of serious political polarization. Can you tell me what it's like to work with your Republican coworkers and how party chemistry in the Assembly works?
Well, there's the Democratic caucus and the Republican caucus. The Democratic caucus handles the Democratic issues, the Republican caucus handles the Republican issues. There are 52 members of the Democratic caucus in the State Assembly, and there are 28 members in the Republican caucus. Now, unfortunately, we need 2 more votes for revenues, and the Republican Party is reluctant to increase taxes. And so we need to work on getting them on our side. We need at least 2 votes. And it's hard to get those 2 votes because they were galvanized in a no taxes situation. They pledged themselves to the Grover Norquist pledge that they would not increase taxes when we do need revenues right now. And so that is the most difficult part of our job. Other than that, I cross over and I play cards with my Republican colleagues. I socialize with them. I talk to them. I work with them. In fact, we co-author bills together. We work on bills together. And all except for the tax issue is the most difficult issue to resolve. And that's a problem we're having in Congress as well. It's dealing with taxes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alex Bonzer from Colfax High School. And so, my question was, for redistricting, could you outline the proposals that I think have been for redistricting using a computer and what the problems might be with that?
Well, you know, I was the chair of the redistricting committee, and I lost that role to the redistricting commission, 14-member commission. Now, when they redrew the lines, they just looked at the demographics of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They wanted to make sure that there was equal representation in both. Now, what's happened is that because they looked at that, the Democrats gained a couple of 3 districts, 2 or 3 districts in the redistricting process, and the Republicans are upset at that. And so they're suing the Senate for the Senate lines and the congressional lines because they're going to lose a couple of seats as a result of the redistricting being drawn. Now, it's not a perfect process. It's not a perfect process because when you have to reapportion the lines and redistrict the lines, it's got to be proportional representation because Congress stated that in our founding Constitution. And so the dynamics of redistricting is such that the courts will probably end up making up their minds for the final 2 lines in the Senate and the congressional districts, because that's why we have the judicial branch. When the legislative branch and the public can't reach terms, we have the judicial branch determine our lines. And so I think that the judicial branch will be involved as well.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christina Wampler from Mercy High School, and my question is, how do you think is the best way to check if a student is qualified to go to the schools you mentioned?
Go to which school?
The schools you were mentioning.
The UC and the CSUs. Well, there's a process. UCs take the top 10% students, so you have to score in the top 10 percentile. And then the CSUs take the top 30% students, so you have to score in the top 30 percentile. And then the other 70% will go to community college. Although some in the top 10% and the top 30% will go to community college because their parents can't afford it, can't afford to go to UC or CSUs. They have a very strict admissions requirement. And so that's the admissions requirement. You have to apply and then you go through the process of getting accepted.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Lovell from Alameda High School, and I was wondering what the reaction was to the banning the shark fin bill, specifically from your own ethnic group, and whether there was any backlash from that.
Well, there was some backlash from those who sold shark's fin that made, I think they make about $70 million